speaker for today is Tim Burroughs, who is the Chief Resilience Officer at the City of Berkeley, a city known for innovation and leadership.
Thank you. Good afternoon. How's everybody doing?
Great.
All right. It's good to see you all here. It's a beautiful day outside, but it's beautiful in here too. There's a lot of power in this room. It's great to be here. I really appreciate the invitation. My name is Timothy, and I'm an assistant to the city manager at the City of Berkeley. And I'm also, as was mentioned, the city's first Chief Resilience Officer. And depending on how I do, maybe the last Chief Resilience Officer. So I'll let you guys be the judge of that. But I'm really honored to be here. Before I was the Chief Resilience Officer, I had that fancy title. I managed the City of Berkeley sustainability programs with a lot of focus on energy efficiency and renewable energy financing. And I also led the development of Berkeley's Climate Action Plan. And I have to say, I have to acknowledge my friends and colleagues at the League of Women Voters, the Berkeley chapter, because the League's Berkeley chapter made a big difference in how that plan turned out, and how ambitious it was, and how actionable it was. And the input that I got as a city staff person, from my perspective, as a city staff person, the team of folks that work in Berkeley at the League are people that I respect, that I turn to a lot for their opinions and their advice. And they always give a lot of constructive, actionable feedback. So I really appreciate that from the Berkeley League, and I look forward to continue to work with you guys moving forward. I know. Yeah, give them a hand. I see a lot of them here today. I'm going to give you some background on some work we're doing in Berkeley, an initiative that we were selected to participate in called 100 Resilient Cities, and some of the work we're doing around resilience. Resilience. I'll talk a little bit about what this term means. It's something you've probably been hearing a lot about. So last year, some of you may have heard that Berkeley was one of 32 cities selected out of a global pool of 400 applicants to participate in an initiative called 100 Resilient Cities. And this is an initiative funded by the Rockefeller Foundation. And they are funding 100 cities over 3 years throughout the globe to advance community resilience. And some of the other communities that were selected, Berkeley is pretty small compared to many of the other ones. In the US, it's cities like New York and Boston and Chicago. Oakland. Locally, we have the city of Oakland and cities of San Francisco, which I'm working very closely with. We're the 3 cities in the Bay Area. We're the only 3 cities that were selected in one region, as sort of a pod within one region. And we were selected to see what the potential is when 3 cities are working together towards similar efforts, how much further we can go than if we're working separately. So I'm really excited about that. And then globally, there's an amazing group of cities, some of which you may have heard of. There's one city called Paris. There's another one called London, Dakar, Senegal, Ramallah, Palestine. Cities really from almost every continent and lots of different sizes are participating. It's great to be part of that network. And like I said, this initiative is designed to advance community resilience. And you're hearing resilience all the time now. There's panels on resilience, there's books on resilience, there's presentations on resilience, there's people who have resilience in their title. And depending on who you ask what that term means, you probably get a little bit of a different definition. So I want to explore that a little bit. And then I want to talk about some solutions that I think embody this term resilience. So sometimes when you ask people, maybe on the street, if you went around and asked people on the street what resilience means, you get a lot of people saying, well, it means preparing for a disaster. Yeah, well, you're a resilient city if you're ready for the earthquake or you're ready for the hurricane. You can bounce back quickly from a disaster. You're robust, you're resilient, you bounce back quickly. There's redundancy in your systems. And when a disaster hits, you bounce back quickly, you're prepared. That's one answer that you often get. Another context for resilience, I think, is in climate. And you hear people actually say climate resilience. And when people say climate resilience, I think mainly what we're talking about is a preparedness for the impacts of climate change, like drought and heat and fire. And so there's that kind of aspect of resilience that you hear about. Other people talk about social resilience and affordable housing and access to health care, those being aspects of a community's resilience. And maybe that's how people that work in public health maybe think about it from that perspective or from social justice perspective. And finally, I think other people talk about it from an economic perspective, and they think about resilience in terms of economic diversity and having a robust local economy that is prepared for economic shocks like the one that we had and are really still coming out of. So you hear lots of different definitions and lots of different ways in which this term is used, and I think all of those aspects and those components that I just mentioned are true. They are all components of resilience. But I would also say that no one of those things on its own makes a community resilient. So I'll give you some examples. If we as a community in Berkeley or as a region, we invest a lot in making our homes stronger, more seismically safe in advance of an earthquake. That's an important component of resilience, right? But if people can't afford to live in those homes, then we're missing a really important aspect of resilience as well. So if you just have safe housing, seismically safe, you're not a resilient community. You're just hitting one aspect of resilience. If we have affordable housing, but that affordable housing is also the same housing that's most vulnerable to sea level rise or most vulnerable to pollutants, then we're hitting one aspect of resilience, but we're missing a whole other aspect in that regard as well. Examples could go on and on. If we're prepared for extreme heat in the face of climate change, we have cooling centers, we work on urban forestry, we're working on extreme heat. But people don't have access to health care. Then we're not a very resilient community. If we're working to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions, but people's basic needs are not met, then there again, we're not a resilient community. Resilience is not about preparing for just one specific thing. It's not about preparing for the next earthquake, which we should be doing. It's not about just preparing for climate change, which we should be doing. It's about thinking about things in a bit more comprehensive, integrated way, preparing our community for really any type of shock or stress that we might face as a community. That's my definition of resilience. It's a community that's better prepared for virtually any shock or stress that we may encounter. Resilience is defined by integrated solutions that prepare our community for a whole range of things that we might face. And that's the goal of 100 Resilient Cities, the initiative that the city of Berkeley is participating in. That's my goal as Berkeley's new Chief Resilience Officer, is to identify solutions that we can work on together, where there's one investment with many different benefits, with a wide range of benefits. One investment, many benefits. Those are the types of solutions that I'm looking for, and the type of solutions that I'm excited about. And I want to talk about a few of those solutions now to make this a little bit, put it in a bit more context, to make it a little bit less theoretical. I want to talk about a few of the solutions that I think about when I'm thinking about things through a resilience lens. And these are a couple of my priorities, actually, as Chief Resilience Officer. One of my priorities is improving our ability as a community, and really as a region, to care for and shelter the most vulnerable residents in the event of a disaster. 2 minutes. Oh my goodness. I can do that, that's fine. So one of my priorities is caring for and sheltering the most vulnerable residents in the event of a disaster. So what does that mean? One of the things that it means, and I think you've heard this theme a little bit already, is making sure that the programs, the messaging, the incentives, the assistance that we have as a city with our partners are reaching the right people in our community. We have many people in our community that have special needs, different needs than other people have. English as a second language, disabilities, low-income residents that may live in substandard housing. We have to make sure that we are prioritizing outreach and assistance to those residents prior to, during, and after a disaster. And that's part of one of my priorities as Chief Resilience Officer. The other is we do have emergency shelters that will be mobilized in the event of a disaster. Major earthquake, major storm where power goes out, housing is compromised. We have to make sure that our shelters that we have are ready to serve their function. And I have to tell you that many of our shelters in Berkeley, the buildings that will serve as a function, they themselves need a lot of work. They need seismic upgrades, they need energy upgrades, they need water upgrades. So that type of solution, for me, fits very well into the resilience lens for a couple of different reasons. One is with those solutions, we're prioritizing the most vulnerable in our community. Also, when we're working on upgrading buildings in the event of a disaster, we're not only thinking about the earthquake seismic upgrades to those buildings, we're thinking about environmental performance of those buildings too. We're making them more water efficient, more energy efficient, adding renewable energy. It's an integrated solution with multiple benefits. And the thing I like about it too is it brings lots of different people to the table. Environmentalists care about that. Social justice advocates care about it. Our housing staff cares about it. Our emergency services staff and citizens care about it. So all of a sudden you're working on an initiative and a thing where you've got a diverse set of people at the table. It's not just one group. It's not just the enviros. It's not just the social justice folks. It's an integrated solution. Very quickly, two more priorities. A second one is what I call energy assurance. I think other people probably call that too. Essentially what that means is clean, integrated backup power for these same critical city facilities and community facilities, hospitals, emergency shelters. These buildings cannot serve their function in the event of a disaster if they don't have access to power. And a conventional way of providing access to power when the grid goes down is a diesel generator, right? That's a dirty solution. So what I'm interested in is a combination of energy efficiency, renewable energy, battery storage that can store power, and when the power goes out, the building can pull from that battery, and a microgrid that enables these facilities to operate independently of the grid when the grid goes down. That's a much different solution than a diesel generator. And that's because I'm looking at it from a resilience perspective, where you're making one investment and hitting lots of different benefits. And third, of course, my background is in climate. I would say I'm what they call a climate hawk. Like I think about how we advance climate action every day of my life, right? And part of my priority as Chief Resilience Officer is still very much focused on climate. And how do we develop integrated solutions in the face of climate impacts? I think Diz talked a lot about green infrastructure. One of our main impacts in Berkeley and in the region from climate is flooding. It's only going to get worse as the sea level rise goes up and storms get more extreme. And we have to deal with green integrated ways of dealing with that impact. And green infrastructure is one of those ways that I'm trying to advance and accelerate in Berkeley. Those are a few of my priorities that I'm working on, and I've got several others that I'm going to do work on as well with many of you and many people in our community. And I'm still pretty early in my role, so I'm on sort of a listening tour here. I have a certain amount of priorities that come from a lot of work we've already done in Berkeley, from our climate plan, our hazard mitigation plan, lots of community input. But we always have the door open, and we want to talk, get more and more ideas and questions from the audience about what we should be working on. Thanks again for having me.